point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello everybody, this is Energy Week with George Harvey and the amazing Tom Fennell in the flesh. I said it for you.
There it is.
Okay, I hit a bit of a milestone this week.
Did you?
Yes, I did. Today, in fact, I put up post number 2372, and it contains the 30,000th link. How about that? Every day,
You count your links?
there you can
They're
go and
counted for
see
you.
where they are
Yeah,
on the website. It's very easy to count them because I use a
I
paragraph.
don't care much about that.
I use a paragraph mark for each one, so all I've got to do is tell a computer count the paragraph
Count the
marks at this
paragraph,
website. Anyway, what I do every day is I go to the internet and look at the news for energy and climate change, and I usually look through 300 or 400 headlines to find particular articles that I think are interesting. And I usually find about 10 to 15 of these. Actually, I always find 10 to 15 of these, except for very rare exceptions.
This is one of those exceptions.
What?
Well, this week, because last week we
Oh, well, this week we have
a little bit.
we have 8 days in the show
different.
instead of 6 and 7. But every day I find 10 to 15 articles, and for each of them I put together a 50 or 55 word synopsis along with a link to the original article. So if we will try to tell you what date these things come from that we're talking about, and you can go to my blog, and when you get there, there's a calendar. We're going to start on the 21st of November, which is a Wednesday, because we didn't record on the 22nd. It was a Thanksgiving. And you can go to the calendar and click on the date on the calendar, and you'll find 10 to 15 articles there, and you can find the one that you're looking for among them.
Well, some of these are well worth looking up.
Absolutely.
Particularly this week, there was some very interesting.
Amazing stuff. Yeah, amazing stuff. And
so we'll try to alert you to some of the better ones, but
yes.
But they're all good.
Yeah, they're all good. Our first article is kind of amazing.
We got a
this
picture
is
coming up here.
From
A picture of a
November
giant crab
20th.
coming up.
Yeah, right. This particular one is from Clean Technica, and well, Tom, what's the headline?
Swedish mining equipment manufacturer will be 100% electric in 5 years. Now let me mention something here.
Yeah.
You know, we're showing a picture of a hard rock mine with a large ceiling and all of that.
Yes.
In America, in our coal mines, it's been electric forever.
Yeah.
Ever since they got rid of the donkeys, you know.
Yes.
It's been, but they're not battery-powered electric. They are run by cables.
Run by cables.
And they're big cables, you know, big flat cables that are, well, about as big as your finger in a cross section. You know?
Yeah.
They lay them down and they roll them up, and it's really quite something to see.
Yeah. I saw this article, and one of the first things I thought was, really, what are they doing underground with big equipment like that? They can't run it with fossil fuels. It would make the most polluted air you can imagine.
Well, in a big place like this, they can, but they can't do it in a coal mine with 4 feet of ceiling in it.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's kneeling down there.
Yeah. Anyway, let me read what this says. After its first generation electric mining machines logged 60,000 hours.
Put the picture up again.
Yeah. Swedish mining equipment manufacturer Epiroc launched its second generation and said it will electrify the entire lineup in the next 5 years, including some of the planet's largest electric vehicles. And those vehicles that are in that picture are not exactly small.
No, they're very large. Well, they talk about a 42-ton truck.
A 42-ton truck is...
That's big.
Big, yes.
What they're trying to do this,
okay.
of course, is because it's expensive to run diesels
Yes.
in a mine.
Yes.
You know, they got a ventilation system that they got to pay for,
Yeah.
and it's expensive. 40% of an underground mine's budget. I wouldn't have thought it was that much.
Wow.
You know, a lot just to keep that air moving. So these new electrified variants are nearly double the price of standard options, but this is recouped through lower expenses on energy.
Wow.
So it makes sense for them.
Yes, it sure
And
does.
as I said, the American coal mining business has been always electrified ever since they got rid of donkeys.
I wonder, you know, they have when I was a kid, and I believe it's still there was a coal mine display at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago.
Yeah,
And you could get into an elevator and go down into the coal mine,
that's cool.
isn't it? And they had operating equipment down there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that must have been
Well, the
electric
equipment is, you know, it's pretty fascinating. Even
Yeah.
the old stuff is really quite
Yeah.
quite tricky. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have ever thought of an underground dump truck?
Yeah.
Well, let's move along here
Okay.
to Mr. Zinke.
We have, by the way, that article came from Clean Technica that we just read. This one is from CNN.
Well, this one's from CNN. I got to mention something about CNN. We
What's
do
that?
a lot of CNN stuff.
Yeah.
Almost every one they start with, almost every item they have, they start with a small video.
Yes.
A minute, minute and a half, 2 minutes. They're almost always worth looking at.
Yes, they are.
There's some very good videos, and in this particular case, I think there was 3 in a row about the California wildfires, and they're very scary.
Yes.
So Zinke rips radical environmental groups over California fires.
Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke put blame on, quote, radical environmental groups, end quote, for the spreading of California wildfires. He criticized, quote, lawsuit after lawsuit by, yes, the radical environmental groups that would rather burn down an entire forest than cut a single tree or thin the forest, end quote.
Well, this is party line stuff, you know. His boss doesn't believe in global warming, so he's not allowed.
Yeah, I want to point out here, the party here is not the Republicans. The party is the Trump party.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's valid. Well, a little takeaway from here: Zinke acknowledged a historic drought in his statement and rising temperatures, but he primarily focused on all parties working together to manage the forest. Now, what does manage the forest mean?
It means you
It means
hire
take
people.
the trees down.
It means you hire
Sell the
people
wood.
in Finland to come rake them.
Well, we'll mention that too. The environmental radicals have prevented us from logging, or what he said, managing the forest for years. Zinke's comments, and this is interesting too, come after President Trump surveyed the devastation in Northern California and suggested raking the forest floors to prevent future wildfires.
As they do in Finland.
He claimed the president of Finland suggested this method to him, who said he doesn't recall discussing this with Trump.
Well, I don't know what to say about this, except there are a couple of things that people should understand, and that is these wildfires are not forest fires, primarily.
Not really. They're brush fires in forests.
Well,
to
they're
a great degree.
brush fires in cities, too,
In
unfortunately.
towns, yeah. This paradise is
Flattened.
gone.
And you know, there was an interesting picture of Paradise, and I actually posted it in my blog. It
We'll
showed
be
a
talking about this
neighborhood.
before this show's over.
Yeah,
We're gonna
it
be
was a
talking several
neighborhood
times.
that had burned down, and you could
These
see.
are nice homes, too.
Yeah, they were nice homes. You could see in the photograph, the houses had burned to the ground.
Yeah.
Anything that was on the ground, the lawns were burned, but there were trees there that still had their leaves on them.
That's interesting.
So the trees weren't burning.
Right, right.
Some of the trees did, obviously, but some of the trees survived.
Well, we got another one coming up here with
We
a
do
picture.
indeed.
A picture.
This is a picture of a PV system on
The Isle of Canna
Yep,
in Scotland.
that's right. And here is an article from PV Magazine International.
Islands ditching diesel in favor of renewables. Well, they've been wanting to do that for a long time, I think.
If you understand the position that the people on these islands are in, it becomes really, really clear why they want to go to renewables. It's like Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard, not Martha's Vineyard. what was the Block Island. Block Island had you know, they got their wind power, and their energy was all of a sudden 35 cents per kilowatt hour, which sounds like a lot of money, except that when it was diesel, it was 75 cents per kilowatt hour.
Well, in Scotland, they got the Hebrides, and I don't think anybody's ever counted how many Hebrides there are, but there's a lot of them.
There's a lot. There's inner Hebrides and there's outer Hebrides. This particular island is in the inner Hebrides. What's the title, Tom?
Islands ditching diesel in favor of renewables.
I think you read that
I
already.
read that,
I'm sorry.
yep.
Residents on two of Scotland's remotest islands are celebrating securing sustainable 24-hour electric supply after years of living with diesel generators that shut down every night. The 55 inhabitants of Fair Isle and the 15 on Canna are running on wind, solar, and energy storage. This is interesting because, you know, people talk about the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine, and they, you know, so how can you count on renewable power? And these
well, if
people...
you're using a diesel, it's a different picture.
But a diesel is just, you know, it's like a natural gas plant or a coal burning plant. It's fossil fuels.
Absolutely.
When that coal burning plant goes down, you got to get your electricity from someplace.
Sure.
When a wind turbine goes down, it's just 1 in 100,000 wind turbines.
Well, maybe 100,000 is a stretch, but yeah, you're right. Well, an interesting takeaway here is these particular islands, and probably most all of them, these new systems are all community owned.
Yes.
The government isn't owning them or anything.
Well,
although the government's helping them. They've got
Yeah.
a proposal. Matter of fact, I'm just about to mention that.
Yeah, go ahead.
The UK is helping islands in Scotland and the Caribbean, Pacific, and Indian Oceans make the switch from dirty diesel generators to renewables. And we've talked about egg, or
Yes.
EXCA, as some of them say. In the event of insufficient renewable energy, a backup generator will power the island's properties and recharge the batteries.
Right.
It's probably their old generator they just kept for
Yeah.
emergencies.
Yeah.
It is expected that this will now be needed less than 10% of the time. And they got power all 24 hours
24
now,
hours a day, which
didn't
they
used
never
to
had
have.
before. They never had before.
No.
They had to wait for power in the morning until the guy started the diesel generator, whoever it was.
Whoever it was.
Okay.
Highly paid individual.
Highly paid individual. We are up to Thursday, November 22nd, with an article from CNN.
Again, there's a video involved here.
Always.
The great oil crash of 2018. What's really happening? This is 2018.
It sure is. In the span of mere weeks, crude prices went from a 4-year high to a full-blown bear market. The oil crash, crude is down almost 30% from its recent peak, was triggered by a series of factors that combined to spook traders who once saw $100 oil on the horizon. And I'll tell you, I think we're going to be well above $100 for reasons that we'll be talking about in just a couple minutes.
As we talk, there's a lot of strange things going on in the market.
Yeah, there's strange things going on in the market.
Well, a quick takeaway here, the meltdown that we just talked about in the oil market has caught almost everyone off guard. President Trump celebrated the oil crash. Oil prices getting lower? Great. Like a big tax cut for America and the world to enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, Saudi oil, U.S. shale oil, Russia, and Iran all increased their output, which is why there was a glut. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they started shutting the spigot, and now we're looking at a shortage. I mean, this is not free market economics going on.
Oh, we've never had free we haven't had free market economics since the first, well, I think there may have been free market economics before there was money. we can thank the changeover to Croesus.
We got another one coming up here. It is a very interesting picture.
We do indeed.
Let's put this picture up. This
really,
is so neat. This is so neat.
It is neat.
That's called the Legacy of the Fjords.
Yep.
And it's a ferry boat.
It's a ferry boat.
And well, we'll mention that as we get into it. Electrons on the High Seas, the Zero Emissions Maritime Report.
This is from Clean Technica. The zero emissions revolution in transportation is gradually spreading to boats and ships. From personal watercraft to ferries and cargo ships that ply the coastal waters, the change to electric motors instead of diesel engines is happening quite quickly.
I'm going to put the picture up again.
Yeah, do it.
I love this. This is a ferry boat.
Yep.
It's a catamaran.
Yeah.
And there's 4 of them actually.
Yeah.
And they run through the fjords, and it's not like being on a boat at all. These things are rectangular.
Yes.
Okay, and
they don't rock much.
well, the particular thing that's happening to this one, the legacy of the fjords, which is the 4th fjord.
Yes.
Okay, a 4th boat, is that it's got something new in the way of a dock. It's an innovative power dock that recharges the batteries while it's in the dock.
Right.
It takes care of the water, takes care of the garbage. I mean,
Right.
these people know what they're doing.
Yeah. I think, you know, a viewer who's curious about why, I mean, we've talked about Norway, these electric ferry boats. We've talked about their electric airplanes. We've talked.
That was Sweden, wasn't it?
No, it was Norway.
Norway, yeah.
The problem that the Norwegians have is that these fjords are very, very long.
There's a lot of them, too.
And there's a lot of them. And if you want to get from one side of one to another,
You're not going to drive.
well, if you try to drive, you could drive
You got a week.
yeah, you could drive 100 miles trying to get to a place that's a mile away.
Yeah.
You know, so they have airplanes that fly from one place to another through the mountains and over the fjords and so forth. And they also have these electric ferry boats, other ferry boats, obviously. They've had ferries for a long time. Fjords are not very good places for bridges.
For some reason.
I think it's because there aren't very many people who really want to cross them. There's a few, but you know, there's not enough traffic.
They've been living there for centuries. They don't need to know what's on the other side.
That's right.
Granddaddy told me.
That's right. Okay.
There's an interesting article here about electric boats, really,
Yes,
electric
yes.
ships. I mean, it's happening in Sweden, it's happening in Canada,
Yes.
happening in the U.S., and this one even gets me. They got an electric life craft system for use on cruise ships. So
Interesting.
there's electric lifeboats now.
Electric lifeboats.
Interesting.
Wow.
So, and this is a good takeaway. Transportation is awakening to the revolution made possible by batteries and electric motors, bringing zero emissions transportation to more people in more places.
Right.
And it's economics that's doing it.
It is. We are up to Friday, November 23rd. I've got a pair of graphs here, and when you put them up, Tom, I'd like to leave them up for a couple of minutes.
I think I've only got one graph. So.
You may have only one graph. I put the second one up.
Well, the first one's up already.
The first one is there,
And
I'm sorry
says-
about the quality of this. This was a high-resolution graph with a white background. When I saw it on
That's what I'm looking at. Yep.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
For some reason, when I put this up for the slideshow, it would not reproduce as a white background, high resolution. But you can still see what's going on.
You can see what's going on. Well,
Okay.
it's the long decline in new oil and gas discovery.
This is the
It's
flip side.
discoveries.
Yes, this is the flip side of what we were just talking about.
And basically, look at the red in that if you can.
That's gas.
And that's gas. And the total, of course, is the two of them together.
Yeah.
And it's steadily going down.
Well, I want to point out this graph shows that in 2017 the output, the discoveries of gas, natural gas, and what they call condensate and crude oil is at the lowest level in the entire history of the graph, which starts in 1950. So we have got rates of discovery of new liquid and gas fossil fuels that are approximately
Very low.
They're probably like they were. I mean, if you think about 1950, we're talking about right after the Second World War. The United States was switching the world was switching to a civilian economy, but that meant that we were gearing up for more cars and things like that. I don't know, we may be at the lowest level since the Depression. And that means that we're going to have reduced amounts of output from the wells for people to use. And it's very important that people understand this.
Well, that is going to push oil prices up.
Sure is.
But fortunately, what's happening is we've got renewables coming online.
That's right.
And they're getting cheaper by the day.
By the day. With the current lack of new exploration, peak oil will be hit well before 2020.
Now that's pretty quick.
It is indeed, according to the International Energy Agency. That's an agency of the United Nations. We're talking about worldwide here. This means that a collapse of oil supply to half its current size will happen within 6 years. And this simply cannot be compensated by new oil discoveries that happen in the future.
And it's interesting because they're still searching.
Yeah.
They're especially up in the Arctic now because the Arctic's melting.
Yeah, and they can search.
So they're searching up there for oil where they couldn't before.
Right.
And they're not finding much.
Well, we're hitting peak oil. That's where we are.
And we thought we were hitting it before.
This is not my idea. This is what the International Energy Agency is saying. Now, I want to point out to people two things. First of all, that particular graph is history. This is history. This is what has happened in the past. That real high peak in the early 1970s.
That's gone.
Well, that was because the oil companies were interested in compensating for the oil crisis of 1973. But nevertheless, what we're seeing here is history. The numbers are available, and the EIA and also the IEA, which is the IEA is the one we're talking about. The EIA is Energy Information Administration, which is the EIO. They both, when they're talking about the future, and here we're talking about a future. What I've got to do now is.
Well, you got to put that other picture up.
I
there,
do that, but the computer that is doing our.
I'll bring the other picture up.
Yeah, let's bring the other picture up. Not that one. That one. The computer that's doing our pictures says that it wants to reboot because it's got some new software to put in, and it'll probably do it again because I hit that thing too quickly. Anyway, this is another thing that shows you how good these organizations are at predicting the future. And this is the future of
explain what's going on in
photovoltaic stuff. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Let's see. Why don't you switch back to both of us, and I'll see if I can do this with both of us here. This thing, if you follow my left hand, that kind of bold line coming up the screen is photovoltaic additions.
Is it really?
Yeah. This is worldwide. And the various more or less horizontal things that come from it are the additions that were predicted by the IEA for the future from certain years. So if you look up from 2015, you can see that it's...
So each one of those is a different source.
They're all from the IEA, but they're from different years. They're
okay.
And every year the IEA,
they're matched there,
yeah, every year the IEA has predicted that we have pretty much hit the peak of of photovoltaic additions, and that we're going to be at every one of those. It declines the following year.
Yeah,
and this is what they're saying, and the
is this incompetence, or are they lying to us?
No, they've just got bad
data.
No, it's not bad data. It's bad algorithms for calculating what they've got on the basis of the data, and they are stymied by this. And the Energy Information Administration, which basically has similar graphs if you do them, has acknowledged that they've got a problem. They've got to work it out. They're hoping to get it done next year.
Well, there's a takeaway here.
Yes.
And the oil companies have been waiting for an oil price bonanza.
Yeah, well.
But while the price may go through the roof, the barrels that can be sold also shrinks fast and drastically.
Yes.
For the climate, this is excellent news because the adoption of electric vehicles and clean transport in general will get a major boost, well as renewables.
It will get a major boost. But you know, if the IEA is correct, and I'm putting up the previous graph here, if the IEA is correct, what they're saying is we're going to be in trouble within a couple of years, in serious trouble, and we're not going to get out of it if we're dependent on oil or gas. And that decline that you see here from 2008 or 2009, the oil companies are not looking. That's a conclusion that I come to. They're not really seriously in the business of looking for oil and gas. I could be absolutely wrong about that, but I'm suspicious of this whole thing. I think somebody is doing something and they're not telling everybody else about it.
Oh, they wouldn't do a thing like that?
Well, you know, in 1973, in April of 1973, I heard a news report from Colorado saying that one of the cities out there, it might have been Aspen or Boulder, I think it was Aspen, had run out of oil. Absolutely run out of oil.
No
home
oil.
heating oil, no oil. No retailer, no wholesaler in the city had any oil at all. There had been a blizzard, and within 24 hours of the blizzard, everybody had run out. And I said, the only way they could do that is if every single oil company has decided that they're going to switch over from home heating oil to gasoline for the summer at exactly the same time and made exactly the same decisions. What are the chances of that happening accidentally?
I'm glad you said accidentally.
Yeah. And so I looked at this and I said, you know what? When they decide to switch from gasoline for the summer back to home heating oil, we're going to have a gas crisis. It's going to come together in September, October, November of 1973. And I started planning my future on the basis of that change. And
it happened.
It happened. That was the gas crisis. I was sitting back saying, I saw this coming, and everybody was saying, oh, nobody saw this coming, not even you. And they had brutal, mean words for me. Okay.
Well, let's move along here. You just mentioned Colorado?
I did indeed.
You did indeed.
And this is an item coming up from Clean Technica. The last
And it's
item was
about
also
Colorado.
from Clean Technica.
Colorado joins California low-emission vehicle program in a rebuke to Trump.
Under the Clean Air Act, only California got a waiver permitting it to impose stricter vehicle emissions rules than the federal standard. Now, other states are free to adopt the California rules if they want to.
And that's what's happening.
That's what's happening. Colorado is the 13th state to do so. There's logic behind this. And the logic is California is the sixth by itself. If it
It's
were
a large economy.
huge, it's like number 6 in the world if it were detached from the United States. And so when the federal government wanted to do emission standards, the people in California said, we want stricter emissions, primarily because of places like Los Angeles, where they have smog problems. They wanted to be able to control emissions because of that. So the federal government said, look, smog? The federal government said, look, if you want to do that, you can do it because the car companies are going to be willing to cater to your market because your market is going to have enough cars in it that it makes sense. And then they said, and if any other state wants to use California standards, since the car companies are going to have 2 standards going, those other states can use those standards. So now,
Well, it's 13 states that signed on to this, as you just said.
Yep.
And combined, those states account for 40% of the new U.S. car market.
Yep.
So this is significant.
Yep, it is indeed.
The governor made it plain his order was aimed directly at protecting the residents of Colorado from the emissions rollback proposed by the federal government.
Yeah. California is not the only place where the people have to worry about air. People live in Vermont because we have clean air. We have clean air that kills about 330 people a year, according to a study at MIT. That's clean air.
Yeah.
And that's most of those, half of our air pollution comes from vehicles. So this is we're talking about a serious problem here. Okay, should we go on?
We want to talk about smog. Let's talk about smog.
Yeah, indeed. We have smog here.
We got a picture coming
We
up
do.
here.
This is from from Reuters. Man, I'm having trouble with names today. From Reuters, UK.
Well, that happens to be, if you haven't noticed the writing, it's smog in Beijing.
Yes.
And the article says global carbon dioxide levels hit a new record in 2017, according to the UN. And if you've got really sharp eyes, you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner of that picture, there's a woman standing there.
Yeah.
I bet you can't find it.
If you've got really sharp eyes, you'll also notice that sign is in Chinese and English.
Well, that's what I mentioned if
Yeah.
you read the signs there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere hit a new record last year, with emissions showing no sign of slowing down. The UN World Meteorological Organization said, yeah, that's according to them, the annual greenhouse gas bulletin dashed hopes for a slowdown in emissions of CO2.
Well, what he says is kind of scary. This is a
Yeah.
quote. This guy's name is Secretary General Peteritalis. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but this is his quote. The science is clear. Without rapid cuts in CO2 and other greenhouse gases, climate change will have increasingly destructive and irreversible impacts of life on Earth.
Well, it's already happening.
The window of opportunity for action is almost closed.
Almost closed. I'm glad you said Peteritalis, because I would have pronounced it Smith.
The rate of increase is in line with the average growth over the last decade, which is the fastest rate for 55 million years.
Yes.
But it ain't happening. It's a hoax.
Chinese hoax.
Yeah, it is, right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are up to Saturday, November 24th, and we have an item here from Interesting Engineering. The California Public Utilities Commission has approved a proposal from Pacific Gas and Electric to build a battery system that will be the world's largest when it is completed. The system's 4 separate energy storage projects will replace plants powered by natural gas.
Well, they're going to replace 3 of those natural gas plants with these battery storage.
Yeah.
I guess the other one they're just going to abandon.
I
They're
guess
closing 4, so
they're closing 4 and they're starting.
3. Well, three battery storage plants.
Okay. But the bottom line on here is that the natural gas plants that they're closing are not baseload power. They are peaking plants.
Okay, they didn't mention that. But
Yeah.
Okay, well,
And-
that's good.
But the thing is, we've got this idea that, you know, natural gas is good, it's baseload power, we need baseload power. Without it, we won't know that the lights will come on in the middle of the night. That
These are basically jet engines, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. That whole thing about baseload power is something that people who say that don't really understand.
Or don't want to understand.
Or don't want to. But this is batteries replacing very, very, very costly energy.
I'm going to say it's expensive, yeah.
And that the batteries are cheaper. And, you know, people
And they're
talk
getting
about
better.
people talk about big storage. The Northfield station is over a gigawatt. And that was, I mean,
And that's a big battery.
that's a big battery. And that was put there to back up Vermont Yankee.
Right.
So, you know, people who are going to talk about the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, should really study what they're saying before they repeat it, because it's.
Well, we keep talking about battery technology.
We do indeed.
And there's still lead acid around. There's lithium ion in various kinds now.
Flow batteries.
And there's new stuff coming up.
Yeah.
There's some interesting things.
Interesting things. I came across one that was today that was really interesting, where they're taking electricity and storing it in steel.
In steel.
Yes, they make the steel very hot.
Okay.
And then they take the heated steel and use it to heat houses
All right,
and
well,
buildings
what the
and
heck?
things like that.
If it works, I'm not
And
going
they
to
say
argue.
it costs like 2 cents per kilowatt hour to do that.
How much?
2 cents.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
They're
amazing.
taking excess power from wind plants
Yeah.
and solar plants,
When the wind is blowing.
baseload plants, whatever plants. When you've got excess power, the cost of that power can go to below zero.
You can pay people to take it.
That's right.
Which
And if
sometimes happens.
so, somebody might pay you to heat up that steel, and then you sell the energy from the steel, and
Yeah.
you know, they say they can sell it for 2 cents. We'll go into that next week.
Let's move into this. Well, wildfires are in the news now, so let's get a picture up here.
A picture. I've lost something here. Oh, wildfires. Yes, indeed. Okay. We've got an
Bingo,
item
there
from
we go.
BBC here.
Climate change. Report warns of growing impact on U.S. life. I just said that, didn't I?
I think you did. The U.S. government's 4th National Climate Assessment says climate change is, quote, presenting growing challenges to human health and safety, quality of life, and the rate of economic growth, end quote. The warning is at odds with the Trump administration's fossil fuels agenda.
Well, there's a nice video here.
Yeah,
Climate change, how 1.5 degrees centigrade could change the world.
yep.
And we're not going to show the video, but it's a nice video. It's worth looking at.
We've got a lot of information. As a matter of fact, one of my blog postings this last week, the first 5 items. What I do is if I have material which is opinion, I put it in a thing called opinion. If I have material which is just science, I put it in a thing called science and technology. Then I have a section on world news and a section on U.S. news. And if anything in world news or whatever is going to is for 3 or more items. So if Australia, for example, has 3 or more items, I'll put in a separate thing for Australia. I did one for France this week.
Okay.
But if I have a particular technology or a particular event taking up a lot more than 3 items, I put that in by itself. And this climate national climate assessment one day this week actually was 5 items. And
well, there's a takeaway from this article here. And
Yeah.
by the way, we're going to touch base on this again before
Yes,
the show.
we are.
Unchecked climate change will cost the U.S. hundreds of billions of dollars and damage human health and quality of life.
right,
Future risks from climate change depend upon decisions made today. I'm going to say that again.
yes, do,
Future risks from climate change depend upon decisions made today.
yes,
Climate change will soon cascade into every corner of American life. The effects are already being felt.
yes,
Again, this is a takeaway. Climate change is not some problem in a distant future.
it's now.
It can only be stopped if the world makes major and costly changes.
Well, the one thing though that they say costly,
Yeah.
those changes may be costly, but they're going to save us a lot of
In the
money.
long run, if we
Even in
don't
the
do it, it's
short
going to
run.
cost more.
Even in the short run, they will save us money.
Yep.
And one of the things that this report mentioned, by the way, and we've mentioned this a lot, is that climate change is impelling the spread of Lyme disease. And you know,
Well, yeah.
if you've had Lyme disease, you can blame it on there's a
There
conspiracy
wasn't any
theory.
ticks in Vermont.
No, there weren't any ticks. When I was a kid, there were no ticks. We ran around in the woods, in the fields, barefoot. I wasn't in Vermont. I was in New Hampshire, but I was just 5 miles from where I am now. There were no ticks. There were no ticks until my kids were like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
Then there were ticks, dog
Amazing.
ticks, and then there was deer ticks, and then there was Lyme disease, and it all came slowly creeping northward. Okay.
Well, we got another one coming up here,
Yep.
and it's a rebuttal to what we've been talking about on the show.
Yeah.
The White House says dire climate report is based upon an extreme scenario.
Yeah, well, the Trump administration is downplaying the 4th National Climate Assessment. It says the study is based on the most extreme scenario, that most extreme scenario is in quotes, and does not account for the innovations that could diminish carbon emissions and the effects of climate change. They've been saying that there's no effects of carbon emissions and no climate change. What is this?
Well,
They've
they
changed
sneaked
signs.
this in on a day after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
They didn't want anybody to see
Well, I've got news for Donald Trump. I think he's right in this case. We are facing a worst case scenario in this climate report, and the worst case scenario, according to the report, is now. And the worst case scenario is now. That's what we're facing.
it. Well, I think I have to agree with you.
So, for once, maybe the White House is right. They just haven't taken credit for making the worst case scenario, but,
Well, we got another picture coming up
we do
here.
indeed, and it's already up.
Oh,
How about that?
how about that? It wasn't in my on-deck circle here.
Yeah, I know.
That's a grim picture,
It
actually,
is.
if you know what's going on.
This is an article from Vox.
They're searching for human remains.
Yes.
3 big takeaways from the major U.S. climate report.
Climate change is here, it's expensive, and it's deadly. According to a new dire report, the risks are not just down the road. The report connects climate change to current issues from declining water levels in the Colorado Basin to the spread of ticks carrying Lyme disease, which we were just talking about.
Well,
It's just more of the same.
what they're talking, the three big takeaways are: one, it's already happening.
Yep.
It's going to get worse.
Yep.
Two, it's going to cost us dearly.
Yeah.
It could cause more harm to the U.S. economy by 2100 than even the Great Recession in 2000 did,
Actually,
which they're hiding about it.
yeah, except that this would be ongoing every
This
year.
will be ongoing. And three, it's deadly.
Yeah.
Rising temperatures kill.
Yep.
Air quality will suffer.
We had another one about that. Let's see, it was The Lancet produced an article basically that said the same thing. People are dying already because of heat that they wouldn't have been exposed to if there hadn't been the climate change. The 1 degree is enough to kill somebody.
But there is good news.
Yes.
We can still do something to limit global warming and to counter its effects.
Yes.
We already have most of the tools we need.
Yes.
We must use them.
Yeah, we have to use them. Okay, this brings us to an item from Engadget.
Oh yeah, we're running into we're in money already, aren't we? This is an interesting article.
This is really interesting. Go ahead, Tom.
Superconducting tape could lead to lower cost wind power.
Wind turbines can need about a ton of rare earth metals each.
That's to make the magnets.
Yes, and that is costly. They use neodymium. And by the way, rare earth metals,
Yeah,
they're not rare.
but they're expensive.
They're very expensive because they are chemically almost identical and they're usually found together. So it's really hard to separate them. But the EU-backed EcoSwing project upgraded a wind turbine in Denmark with superconducting tape that reduces the required amount of rare earth metals to as little as 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds. So this
I read the article, and they're not telling you what's going on.
No, they're not. But they are telling you the outcome. And that, I think, is important. If they can cut down the amount of
reduces the
neodymium.
costs.
Right. If they can cut down the amount of neodymium with this stuff, it means that we can reduce the cost of these wind turbines.
It reduces the size, it
yeah.
reduces the weight,
Yep.
okay, and it reduces the price.
Right. And a ton of neodymium costs something over $100,000. So that's not the magnet, that's the raw metal that's used to make the magnet.
To make the magnet.
So it would cut the cost of the wind turbine by
Well,
about that
they're
much.
giving you a benchmark here. You can produce the same power for about half the weight and volume of a conventional
Yeah, that's
turbine.
another thing, the weight, yeah.
But it's still experimental, so
Yeah.
we got to work up. We got to wait.
Well, they have put it into a wind turbine and they're expecting it to work. Okay, we're up to
We
Monday.
got another one coming up here.
We do indeed.
This is a very interesting article.
This is
We got a picture coming up. Here.
Monday, November 26th.
Let's get the picture.
This is
up.
an article from Inside Climate News.
So what you're looking at there is a glacial lake.
Yes,
Not just any glacial lake. It's a new glacial lake.
right.
And there's about a dozen pictures in this article.
A lot of pictures.
All beautiful pictures.
Yep.
Until you realize what's going on, and they're
Yep.
scary.
Yep.
In the Mount Everest region, the world's highest glaciers are melting and receding.
For many tourists, a trek to Mount Everest Base Camp is an adventure of a lifetime. But what is stunning scenery to tourists is for climate scientists an apocalyptic sight. They see dramatic evidence all around of a rapidly warming atmosphere.
Well, it's a photo essay,
Yep.
and it's well worth looking at.
It sure is.
They're pretty pictures, as I said, but they're scary pictures.
That's right.
Because it shouldn't be happening.
Yep.
Changes in the landscape include large lakes where there were none, glacial ice replaced by ponds, boulders, and sand, the snow line moving up the mountains, and glaciers that have receded and shrunk.
Yep.
Now, this is at the roof of the world.
The base camp is 50 meters lower than it was. And,
Yeah.
and I think the reason
There's a
for
picture
that
of a map
is
there where
because it was on a glacier, and the glacier
the
has
glaciers, yeah, the glacier melted.
Yep. Okay. Should we move on from this?
Yeah, we're back to the same old, same old.
Yeah. We're at Tuesday, November 27th.
Well, no, we're still on Monday.
We're still on Monday?
Yeah, we still
So we
Yeah,
are.
we got one more.
Yes.
Despite Trump, the shift from coal to renewables continues unabated.
Well, this
Duh.
is this is from Triple Pundit. If you were only paying attention to what the White House public statements say, you would likely think that coal has seen a magnificent revival in the last 2 years since Donald Trump became president. In reality, what's happening is a little different from that.
Well, coal plants are retiring at the same rough rate under Trump that they were under Obama.
Yeah, so Obama's war on coal has become Trump's war on coal.
Markets and science matter more than rhetoric.
Yeah.
Okay? And energy companies across the country are continuing to shut down coal plants, in favor of moving toward more renewables.
The last item for this week's show is from a publication called Daddyhood.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose that publication instead of the renewable energy publications is because one thing that was said right up front that relates to exactly what we're talking about here.
We'll hit it in a couple of minutes now.
Okay, we are up to Tuesday, November 27th.
Let's see. Yeah, I read most of the takeaway here. The market isn't fair as we're still giving massive amounts of taxpayer money to the coal industry.
Yeah, which some people deny.
The policies distort the market, make it harder to make the switch to clean energy that we need in order to meet science-based pollution reduction targets.
And the coal industry wants a handout.
Well, wouldn't you?
Not that handout, I don't think.
We got another picture coming up here.
It's already
It's on deck.
On deck, and we are now up to Tuesday.
Now it's
November
Tuesday.
27th, and an item from PV Magazine International.
Greenpeace Energy wants to buy Germany's RWE coal business and to replace it with 8.2 gigawatts of renewables. And by the way, I want to mention Greenpeace Energy is not the same as the environmentally friendly energy group of the same name.
Yes.
They're related, they're connected, but they are independent.
Greenpeace Energy is an energy business.
It is.
That
it really
is related to Greenpeace.
It's a utility.
Yeah. Hamburg-based green electric provider wants to shut down RWE's coal plants and replace them with 8.2 gigawatts of wind and solar plants. Approximately 7 billion euros will be invested in the new facilities. Now, here's the thing that's really interesting. They're not just doing this for public good and saving the world. They're doing it for another reason in addition.
Okay.
They want to shut down those coal burning plants and replace them with renewable energy because they can make money doing that.
Well, tickle me with a feather here. Well, they're burning lignite in these mines. And we don't even use lignite in this country.
Lignite is so cheap, it isn't worthwhile transporting.
It's one step above peat.
Yeah, so what they do is they find lignite and they build a lignite burning plant right there.
And that's what they're doing. That's what's going on here, because they're going to shut down the mines, and they're all surface mines.
Yes.
Okay. And that's where they're going to put the photovoltaics.
Right. They have surface mines in Germany that are twice the size of the island of Manhattan. Just think of how big a utility scale solar plant you can put in a mine that's twice the size of Manhattan.
It would be large.
It would be large. It would be 15 miles long and 4 miles wide.
And they're not playing games. In 2030, they're expected to deliver more than 15 terawatts of renewable electricity.
Right.
So this is not small scale.
No. Okay, our next item is from Renewable Energy Magazine.
Developing nations now leading on global clean energy. And by the way, you pull this article up, and the very first thing you see is some sheep grazing under electrical panels.
Yeah, beautiful picture.
It's a nice picture.
Yeah. Higher energy demand, lower technology costs, and innovative policy making allowed developing nations to seize the mantle of global clean energy leadership from wealthier nations, according to a comprehensive new study from Bloomberg New Energy Finance.
This was surprising to the people, to Bloomberg, because they're investment advisors.
Yeah.
Basically. They found that the emerging market nations accounted for the majorities of new clean energy capacity added globally in 2017.
And we will learn about that from this article that's upcoming from Daddyhood.
The shift is being driven by the rapidly improving economics of clean energy technologies, most notably wind and solar. More below.
I don't have it here, but do you have the list of the 5 countries that were at the top? Chile was at the top.
I don't have
India
that
was
list.
second.
No, I don't have that
And
list.
one of them, I mean, these were, I think Brazil was in the list, and one of them was an African country like Uganda or Kenya or one of those.
I don't have the list, so I
Okay.
can't tell you.
All right.
Little quick takeaway here, though.
Yeah?
Oh, this is the next one coming up. No,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay. We are up to Wednesday, November 28th.
There's a graph in this, though.
Oh, okay.
It shows the decline of fossil fuels compared to the growth of renewables.
Yes?
Almost a mirror image.
Yes.
It's almost exactly a mirror image.
Yes. Okay, we are up to an item from the BBC.
We got
A flood.
We got a picture here too.
We do indeed.
Sydney storms. Hundreds call for help amid flash flooding.
Now, there's 2 stories here, each of which has its own picture. Does it? Yes. There's 2 stories here. They have their own pictures. I want to point out that they are very closely related. The first of these is Sydney.
They are related, but they're not the same story.
They're not the same. Sydney is the capital of New South Wales, one of the states of Australia. It had its average rainfall within just 2 hours. Monthly rainfall, the average that they had for the month of November, fell in 2 hours, meteorologists said. More than 500 people called for emergency assistance after the storm hit the city and nearby regions, causing floods, power cuts, and flight delays. Now that picture...
There's New South Wales, which is sort of equivalent of maybe the Carolinas in the U.S.
Yeah, more or less.
It's not quite as far as Florida.
It's not all the way to the south,
but it's down there.
It's like from halfway from north to south on the east coast.
On the east
down
coast,
to
it's pretty heavily. It's probably the most heavily populated part of Australia.
It is. It's a big state, though. It really is.
Well, bigger than it is Queensland, right above it.
That's right.
I mean, all the states in Australia are big.
Yeah, Queensland is where our next item comes from. Do you want to go to the next one?
Well, we'll just mention a quick takeaway here, and then because it blends right in.
Yeah.
Sydney has been deluged by the heaviest November rain it has experienced in decades. By the way, November is their equivalent of April showers to us.
That's right. We're
causing
in
flash
springtime.
flooding, traffic chaos, and power cuts.
This is springtime. It is the time of year when they get their it's the wettest time of year when they get their wet weather.
And we'll
Now,
bring up this picture of Sydney again.
no, this is not Sydney. This is Queensland.
How'd you do that?
Well, I
you changed at the same time I was changing.
okay. This is this item is also from the BBC.
We'll bring up Queensland then.
Yeah, this item is also from the BBC.
Queensland bushfires. Thousands told to flee a catastrophic threat.
More than 130 bushfires are burning in Queensland, fueled by strong winds, a heat wave, and dry vegetation. The state has raised its fire danger warning to catastrophic, which is the highest level of warning, for the first time in history, and told thousands of people to evacuate. Now, you want to put that picture up?
Again? Yep.
Okay, that is Queensland. That is New South Wales. Now, Queensland.
So it's raining in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And it's dry in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and it's like these are adjacent states.
Yeah.
And this is happening. This wildfire is happening during the rainy season because there's no rain. Now, what has happened?
That's what they're saying here. The worst threat from fast-moving bushfire near the town of Gracemere on the East Coast, and that's what that picture is.
Yeah.
Authorities have ordered about 8,000 people to evacuate immediately.
Yeah.
Okay? They're not playing games.
This is
unlike Australia's drier south. Intense fire conditions are unusual in Queensland in late November because it is the wet season.
This is the wet season.
The region has been experiencing a record-breaking heat wave.
Yeah. This is a mirror of what was going on in California with the wildfires in California.
Very much so.
And but at the same time, a couple hundred miles away, we've got I shouldn't say a couple; it's a few hundred miles away. We've got this flooding that's going on in New South Wales, and what has happened is the weather all over the world, but you can see it very clearly here, has become chaotic.
That's the right word for it.
We have got into a chaotic period of weather.
It is not what they expect.
We've had weather patterns in the past. We've had monsoons that hit India and monsoons that hit Arizona. We've had wet weather in New England and cold weather in Minnesota, and occasionally a hurricane in Florida. But this has been the normal pattern. Now we've got chaotic weather where it is becoming more.
And that
and more
really means
difficult.
unpredictable.
It means unpredictable. There is a certain level of predictability here because we know about what is going to happen with El Nino and La Nina.
Well, we think we know what's going to happen with them.
We know better than we did when I was a kid, for sure.
Well, you didn't even have that name when you were a kid, I don't think.
I don't think so.
I don't remember.
Certainly not in English.
Yeah.
They might have known about it in Ecuador. Should we go to this last article?
Yeah, this is the last item. It's
right.
It's again. Well, we already mentioned this article. This is from Daddyhood. Another coal myth busted as developing nations turn to renewables, and we've already hit this.
Yeah, we have. A study put an end to the myth that the world's developing nations are maintaining a dependence on coal. It showed that emerging economies are the renewable energy investment and development leaders and have reduced their new coal plant builds by nearly half. Now, what's happened here is renewable coal. The developing nations have been saying we need electricity, and the traditional way of dealing with electricity is put in coal-burning power plants. It's always the cheapest one around, and transmission lines. And
that's the way it's been.
That's the way it's been. Now what's happening is these countries have reduced the number of coal-burning plants that they've got being built by half in 2 years. 38% in 1 year. The reduction has been 38% in 1 year. If you have a business and you lose 38% of it in 1 year, what do you do? You hurt, you very likely go broke.
Yeah.
And what's happening here, and the reason I chose this article from Daddyhood was because it said it right up front. It makes it very clear. They are cutting back on building coal-burning power plants in the developing world.
Well, according to Bloomberg, in 2017, developing nations, the ones we're talking about, added a record of 114 gigawatts of zero carbon generating capacity of all types.
Yes.
94 gigawatts of that was wind and solar.
Yeah.
Which is another record.
Yeah.
And these are the developing nations.
These are the developing nations, and if you look at why they're doing this, it's really clear. It's because now we talked about this last week. Bloomberg New Energy Finance said that the cost of wind power and solar power had fallen to grid parity everywhere in the world except Japan. Now, in Japan, they're just, they don't move into wind power and solar, particularly wind power, very fast. Japan is building. They don't have
that much space.
They don't have a lot of space, and solar plants take a lot of space. The Japanese have been doing things that are very innovative, like they've been looking and saying, look, there's a golf course that's going broke. Wow, we can put solar there.
Yeah.
They could have put rice farms there, but they put solar there.
They could do both.
They could do both, actually. Yeah, you're right. But this is something that I think people should bear in mind. We are in the period of transition right now. We have hit the inflection point. We have hit grid parity, and the world is starting to change.
But they're only starting. The very last paragraph or sentence I have comes from this article.
Yeah.
Despite ample evidence that new build renewables can underprice new build coal-fired plants, nearly 200 gigawatts of coal are currently under construction in developing nations today.
Yeah. We have to go, Tom, unfortunately.
Oh, we're out of time.
We are out of time.
I'll be darned.
So we've got to wave goodbye to everybody.
Well, I'll put us up here so we can do that.
Bye. See you next time.